Welcome back. It's fall, and that means it's time to harvest all the pumpkins I didn't actually plant. Yep, so fountain. These pumpkins were a total accident. You guys know I've been growing the classic Florida heirloom Seminole pumpkins for years. Well, 2 years ago, I grew a pumpkin from the island of Grenada that was a black, bumpy pumpkin that I happen to have some seeds for, and I tried to grow the variety out. Now, I didn't know that it was a Cucurbita machata, which is the same variety, the same species, not the same variety, but the same species as Seminole pumpkin, which means they could interbreed. I didn't know that. I tried to grow some of the seeds out, and I didn't have very much luck. I got one pumpkin that disappeared, and I had one good looking pumpkin that looked just like the black bumpy pumpkin that I had started with. However, I grew them right back here. And I also had some Seminole pumpkins, most of which had started themselves because they tend to do that. If there's any pumpkins laying around in the fall where they can rot into the ground and leave a few seeds, they come back up again. And I had planted them in my compost piles too. Just every time we'd eat some, we'd throw some of the seeds in there along with the rinds and everything and just let them rot down, and I knew they would come back. So I had some mounds back here with them in it. Well, anyhow, they got together because I saved the seeds from that black pumpkin and I went out there to my field and I planted them. Well, those pumpkins came out really interesting and strange looking. They were deliberately planted, and I called them zombie pumpkins. They're a Seminole cross with a tropical Grenadian pumpkin. However, I didn't really get to do as much in the grocery row garden this year. I did quite a bit in the spring and then just kind of let it go. And I noticed there were some pumpkin vines in here, and I assumed they were probably just Seminole pumpkins again. But what we ended up with was some sort of crosses. There's a few in here that look like pure Seminole pumpkins, but most of them are some sort of wild looking, sometimes bumpy, sometimes these big oblong spotted ones. They're a cross, and the Seminole pumpkins that restarted themselves, I guess, are actually now involved genetically with that black pumpkin, but I never thought we would get this kind of variety. And these look different from the ones that I planted out there that turned out to be crosses. That all came from the black pumpkin. These all came from Seminole pumpkin mothers. Those all came from the black pumpkin mothers, but they're both crosses of Seminole pumpkin along with that Grenadian pumpkin, because those are the only two varieties that I grew, and these were literally a weed in the garden this year. You know, I didn't decide to put pumpkins back in here like this pumpkin. We gained a lot of size on some of them. I mean, the Seminole pumpkins that we grow are only about that big. We gained a lot of size. They're actually bigger than the originals. Here's a really weird one. Let me show you another one. I've been waiting on this one. Here's a cross. This one is extremely bumpy, but it has mostly the orange of a Seminole, but they get this white blush, which the black pumpkin had a white blush to it. but it was mostly black with a white blush, and now we've got this white blush. It's not mold, it's actually part of it. White blush on a bumpy, bizarre Seminole pumpkin cross. That is really interesting. Now, the thing that I noticed is that the flavor of these pumpkins, the ones that we've actually eaten so far, the zombie cross version, is superior to the original black pumpkin, and it has been superior to the Seminole pumpkin line that we had. So if that holds true for these, which had a Seminole pumpkin mother or multiple Seminole pumpkin mothers, this could be really good. But maybe we're kind of ending up with a landrace of weird. It's like the Caribbean Seminole crosses. Holy moly! Look at this one. look at the size of that. Now, I didn't even know this was over here until we started doing this video. I just walked around the corner, and here is a pumpkin that is massive. Looks like it's got dirt on it. It's totally intact. I wonder how much that weighs. That is the biggest Seminole pumpkin ever. Look, that's insane. That is really cool. So this is probably hybrid vigor that made it so big, but obviously there was some pretty interesting genetics coming in from the Caribbean. My guess is that it had so many different pumpkin varieties. It was not a stable line at all. It was a whole bunch of different ones mixed together. Now I'm just gonna go and look at every mound around here and see if there's another one sticking in it. That has been buried under weeds. We had velvet beans in here and sweet potatoes and other things that pretty much grew themselves. I had originally started by putting a few rows of peppers in here, but life got out of control and the whole thing got eaten by velvet beans, which I had grown them in here for a nitrogen fixer the previous year, and I left some seeds and they ate the area. But I did not expect that. I didn't expect to see one that big. Got a lot of pumpkins. Here's one from our original Seminole line. That's what they normally look like. It's not a record like the other one, but it's pretty good looking. That's a pretty pumpkin. That's a good fall decoration right there. It's pretty good. This one looks like a Seminole. This one looks a lot like the original black one I had, with more of a gray blush on it. This one's blue. I think that's the last one for now. There's a few green ones that are still out there. But here's the pile of tropical pumpkins crossed with Seminole pumpkins that we did not plant. This is just from the debris that was around the edges of the garden where we had raked up last year's garden vines and leaves and everything. And from ones that just showed up inside of the grocery row gardens, we got probably 300 pounds, maybe, give or take 50 pounds probably. About 300 pounds of pumpkins, and they're beautiful. I've never seen colors like this, and of course they didn't have problems with pests or disease or insects. We lost a few here and there, but the vigor of a Caribbean variety mixed with the vigor of a Seminole variety gave us something very, very interesting. So this will be what we just grow out. It's kind of our wild landrace, I guess. Some of them still look like the pure Seminoles. Some of them look a little bit more like the original black one that we started with. A little more like that, which is kind of turning to the blue-white now. But if you grow the plants that like your climate, and you let the ones that plant themselves or the ones that survive, instead of intervening with, I mean, these were not irrigated, these were not sprayed, these were not even fertilized. They just grabbed whatever I guess was in the compost pile or in the ground, and they ran and ran and ran. So this is what you want. So if you're trying to figure out what grows in your area, just plant a bunch of stuff, and then whatever lives and starts to become an invasive weed on your property is probably what was supposed to be there. I'm very excited about these pumpkins that I didn't grow on purpose, and that the grocery row garden system is so alive that it can host plants that I didn't even deliberately plant. That it's going to be interesting eating our way through these pumpkins over the next 10 years and seeing how they taste. And probably we'll put some seeds up for anybody that wants to experiment with it. But we do have a cross called the zombie pumpkin, which is a bumpier version. That those were the ones that had actually the black pumpkin mother. These all had a Seminole pumpkin mother, but they're still the cross of genetics. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Thanks for joining me. I'll be catching up with you all soon. Be sure to check out Joseph Lofthouse's book, Landrace Gardening, if you get a chance to. And if you want to learn more about really simple, easy gardening, check out my book, Minimalist Gardening. And if you're ever in Atmore, Alabama, come and see us at Atmore Farm and Garden, which is our feed and seed store that we are in and I've been very busy with. And we've added machetes and food forest plants and a lot of other things that you don't normally see in a little small town feed and seed. But it's been a lot of fun, and I've already met some of you guys over there, so come and see me, Atmore Farm and Garden. And until next time, may your thumbs always be green.